This video is to help you out with some of the fundamentals of our martial arts system. So we're going to talk about three things: methods of execution, points of reference, and our master key method of execution set. So methods of execution are how our weapons move into action. They're the fundamental muscle movements we do in order to punch, elbow, do all our strikes, blocks, and manipulations. Where we work these from are called points of reference. Points of reference are where we place our hands so we know it's time to hammer, thrust, or whip. So let's look at some of these fundamental ideas, and then we're going to go into master key method of execution set, which helps us practice these ideas. The point of reference for thrust is your hands at your hips. Every time our hands are at our hips, this is the point of reference for thrust. When our hand is at the same shoulder, same side, these are the points of reference for hammer. When our hand is on the opposite side of the body, high, middle, or low, that's a point of reference for whip. Now when we use the term point of reference, it means when our body is at that position, the only thing we can do is the muscle movement associated to hammer, thrusting, or whipping. And the path it's going to take is known as our angle of execution. So if we're at a point of reference for hammer, our hand is going to go down and to the inside. If we're at a point of reference for whip, our hand, or actually our arm, is going to go down and to the outside. If we're at a point of reference for thrust, our hand and our arm is going to go forward and up. That's it. So we build off all our movements off of that. So if I'm at a point of reference for whip and I whip, I can whip with my back knuckle. I can whip with my hand sword. I can whip with my hammer fist. I can whip with my forearm. I can whip outwards with my forearm high. If I'm at a point of reference for thrust, I can thrust, uppercut. I can thrust with a vertical hand. I can thrust with my heel palm. I can thrust with the tips of my fingers. Same thing whip. I can whip with my tips of my fingers. So, as you understand, as we develop these three movements, the master key methods of execution, we can build all our basics from that. So let's just do a quick review before we go on to our master key method of execution set. Hands at our hips is the point of reference for thrust, and thrust comes up and away from our body. Point of reference for hammer is same hand, same shoulder, and we hammer, it's down and to the inside. Point of reference for whip is hand at the opposite shoulder. Again, it can be high or anywhere on this side. And we're going to whip down and out. So those are our 3 points of reference and methods of execution related to the master keys, fundamental ways in which we move into action. So, in order to get this to work, we have our master key method of execution set. Our master key method of execution set gives us ways to practice our master key methods of execution and include different principles of motion in order to improve the quality, power, and precision of our art. So we're going to begin, hands and feet together, hands on our thighs, bow, drop into our meditating horse. Now notice, I start a point of reference for thrust. When I drop, I thrust. So I'm at meditating horse, close my eyes. When I open those eyes, I'm ready to go. Hands at my hips. And we're going to thrust, hammer, and whip with my right hand. Then we're going to thrust, hammer, and whip with my left hand. Double thrust, points of reference for hammer. Now I'm just going to take a little break and we're going to do this again. But we're going to say thrust is number 1, hammer is number 2, and whip is number 3. Okay, so just remember that. Thrust 1, hammer 2, whip number 3. It's important to understand the cycle here. So we bow, meditating horse, hands at our hips, thrust, hammer, whip, thrust, hammer, whip, double thrust, points of reference for hammer. So hammer's number 2, so we do that. Number 3 in our list was whip, so we go to a point of reference for whip, and whip. We have no number 4, so we got to go back to number 1, which is thrust. Then we hammer, whip, thrust. Both had hammers, so we double hammer. Points of reference for whip. You can do it high, or one high, one low. We're going to whip, we're going to whip, thrust, hammer, whip, thrust, hammer, double whip. Points of reference for thrust, back into our meditating horse, and up. So that's the method of execution set. You'll notice that's a cycle. We only have 3 movements: thrust, hammer, whip. Second time it's hammer, whip, thrust, and then whip, thrust, hammer. That's all it is. It's very simple, but the idea is to build our basics. So once we have the memorization of the set done, what we're going to do is add different principles. We're going to guideline, work within our easy motion barrier, work on different types of breathing, the tea kettle effect, sync, explosive breathing, reverse motion. We're going to do all this within the master key set in order to improve the quality of our basics. So we're going to work on this obviously in class, but this is to help you out, a little bit of way to practice at home, understand your points of reference, where we place our hands so we know it's time to hammer, thrust, and whip. Methods of execution, specifically the master key methods of execution, which are the fundamental ways our weapons move into action. The angles of execution for each of the master keys, which is up and out, down and in, down and out. And finally, a little survey of the master key method of execution set to practice your basics.